Let's have a nice cup of TRE in the afternoon with Hannah Murray.
Oh yeah. Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild, a million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse of how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. Watch the ripples change the size, but never leave the stream of warm and permanent sand. So the days float through my eyes, but still the days seem the same. And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't tell them to grow up out of it. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Where's the shame you've left us up to her next event? Time may change me. You can't twist time. Strange fascination fascinating me. Our changes are taking the pace I'm going through. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Ooh, look out, you rock and rollers. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Pretty soon now you're gonna get older. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. I said that time may change me, but I can't trace time.
David Bowie and Changes. Joining us on the line now is Denis O'Regan, who was the official photographer to music legend David Bowie. His fabulous new book, David Bowie from the Man Who Photographed Him Most, is a stunning book from his unrivaled collection of photographs from the 1970s to the 1990s. Accompanying Bowie on 2 world tours and enjoying a decades-long relationship with the star, no one photographed Bowie more than Denis. Welcome to the show, Denis.
Hello, thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I just realised when I was playing Bowie there, which is obviously the music I'm going to play when chatting with you, wondering if that kind of makes you feel emotional. You know, you were friends with the guy, you knew him for many years. It still must make you sad.
It does occasionally, yeah. Not as sad as when I'm going through photograph after photograph, preparing those, for instance, for the book. And then I have to sort of retouch, to restore the photographs that might have dust and hairs on them over the years. And then I'm looking very closely at him. because I have to magnify the images. And obviously I go right back to where we were when I took that picture. And he was very funny and very kind to me, taking me on that tour in the first place. And we had our ups and downs during the tour, but he was always very sweet about everything, really. And so the photographs take me back. But while I'm doing it, I often listen to his music. Oh. So both of them, I can remember when I first heard a particular song or when he played that live, and I can think of the places where we might have been. So, yeah, a lot of it does bring memories back.
Yeah.
And a tinge of sadness as well. I still haven't watched the final videos that he made because I just find those a little too close to the bone, really.
Yeah, understandably. And as a successful photographer, how does one become somebody's official photographer, like David Bowie? How did that come about?
In my case, I just asked each.
Really?
Yep.
That's
so
amazing.
I started touring. Yeah, I started touring by going on the road with Thin Lizzy, and then the Rolling Stones, then David, and then Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, who actually asked me. Well, Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet both did, and then Queen, which I asked to do again, and then David Bowie again for the second world tour that I did with him. So I knew what I wanted to do when I was sort of 19, when I first saw David actually live as Ziggy Stardust, the night before he retired the character, which came as a bit of a letdown. And I decided I loved music already. I'd been to concerts before I saw him, but I'd never seen anything that had those elements of theatre and mime that he introduced into his shows. So I thought, I know I'd like to take pictures, but I think what I'd like to do really is photograph him. And then the following year, I was working in a newspaper shop, earning money to go around Europe on Interrail. And two girls came in giggling, one of whom I met the other day after all that time. And I asked them what they were doing. And they said, David Bowie's across the road recording. So I shot home, got my little cheap camera and came back and waited for him and took pictures of him as he arrived. Then a month later, I took that trip around Europe and then became hooked on travel. So I thought, I know what I want to do now, which is travel and take photographs of David Bowie. So when the opportunity arose, I said that's what I wanted to do. And I put together a proposal which included doing a book. And David really liked that idea. So I went on the tour and just documented him. And it was only going to be a short period. And I kept arguing that, well, I think I need to go to Japan. You know, that would be missing. That would be missing from the book if we didn't do it. And I ended up doing the whole world tour. We got on really well. And he loved the idea of creating a book. And it's the first time he'd been seen in that way off stage. People are used to it now. They know that he's funny. But then his image has been more cold and theatrical. He hid behind a mask and a character. And then in 1983, in the Serious Moonlight tour, it was the real him. So that was perfect timing for me to want to do what I wanted to do with him. So it coincided rather well. But it was my suggestion, and the book idea really appealed to him.
Yeah. So
that's how that one came about.
Gosh, amazing. And lovely that you got on well. I mean, it could have been a disaster, I suppose, if you didn't.
That's the phrase that went through my mind when you were saying that. Yeah, it could have been a disaster. But I didn't. It didn't, cross my mind for decades, really, that when I went to, I was invited to rehearsals. That's where it began, in Texas. And I went out to these rehearsals. It was on a huge sound stage, like a giant hangar. And the full stage set had been set up, and David was going through various songs. And then over the PA, I heard, Dennis? I thought, well, that can't be me, obviously. I'm just and it was David asking me to come down to the front and ask which songs he should include. And that was his way of bringing me on board. But it was very him and very sweet. Then he went training for the next few mornings at a gym to get fit for the tour. He went boxing and he took me along. And, his PA was there and his bodyguard was there. And again, while I look back at those pictures, I could see the bodyguard staying close to David while I was there because he didn't know me from Adam. But later on then I noticed the bodyguard couldn't be seen in so many pictures once David decided I was okay. And we just got along. But I really expected him to keep me at arm's length. That's what I expected. David Bowie, the Enigma.
Yeah.
And when I got there, it was the opposite. He was so welcoming and sweet and funny and very English. So it wasn't what I expected, as you say. I expected something completely different.
Yeah.
But it worked out rather well. And we got along well with the same. I mean, one thing I remember, I don't know why I think about this, but we were both from London and we were in Japan, weirdly enough, at a club called Red Shoes. And of course, during that tour, the hit was Let's Dance, which is put on your red shoes and dance the blues. And spontaneously, we both jumped up and started singing along to Madness, Our House. And it was, I know. And it was because I suppose we just missed London. It just took us back home. It was so sweet. And I'd forgotten about that till just now.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, it was lovely, yeah.
Such precious moments. And
exactly.
You know, as you said, he was this enigma for many years and was putting on a mask and makeup and people didn't really feel like they knew him. So you must have really been aware at the time how special it was to be let into his world and to be able to not only see him, but photograph him away from the limelight.
Yeah, I did think it was special, but then imposter syndrome starts to set in a little bit. And I thought, well, if I could do this, then anyone could do it. I mean, that's what I thought, because I just asked to do it and it happened. But of course, there'd been a build-up. I'd been taking pictures for quite a while before that. I'd toured with the Rolling Stones the year before, which is what led to the David Bowie tour. And again, I went to the Rolling Stones show, the first one on that tour, which was Feyenoord Stadium in Rotterdam, to shoot 3 songs along with all the other photographers. I hadn't even arrived with enough film to shoot a whole show. And I ended up shooting that show and then staying on tour for 2 weeks, then 4 weeks, then 8 weeks. And someone on that tour then put together the David Bowie tour the following year. So that he obviously, when I went to him and said, this is what I want to do, he went to David and said, well, you know, he's okay. A bit troublesome, you know. But
he's from London.
Yeah, a bit troublesome, a bit lazy, but he'll be okay.
Oh,
so
great.
Yeah.
And how did
I've been through my audition.
For doing 3 nights with the three songs it was supposed to be with the Rolling Stones. Again, did you just ask to stay?
Literally. More than
that.
once. I know. Again, and I began to think, God, this is easy.
Yeah.
But of course, I built up to it. But what's the quick story about the Stones was I had decided to go abroad because of this 3-number rule and it being London and there's so many photographers. I thought I'll go abroad and shoot away from home where the band will be wearing different clothes to all the photographs that everyone takes in London. You know, it's one of the main centres, obviously, for music. Along with London, Los Angeles and New York. So I went to shoot Queen in Scandinavia, which eventually led to me touring with Queen, including their last show. I arrived I went up in a helicopter and came in beside their helicopter, which had Queen written down the side. And below is Queen's last ever audience with Freddie, which obviously no one realized at the time. So then weird things like that happened. But with the Rolling Stones, I went to Detroit and I was with 2 friends and we were down near the front. They'd got the tickets and it was a gigantic indoor stadium. It was 80,000 inside. And a girl came in leading all the photographers into the photo pit for their 3 songs. And she's wearing her headphones. And my friend said, duck into the line. Why don't you jump in and join them? So I did. And as I approached, she threw me out. So that was that. And then a year later, when the Stones came to play in London, they were doing the 100 Club, tiny club, 300 people. And people didn't really do that at the time. And it took all day to sell 300 tickets because no one believed the Rolling Stones. It was announced on the radio. So I did a deal with the PR who'd asked me to do that. And I said, can I have more than 3 songs in Rotterdam? So he said yes, had no intention of actually agreeing to it. So I went to Stones did some small theatre shows in Britain, and one of them was in Aberdeen. And at the airport in Aberdeen in the lounge, there was the girl who'd thrown me out the previous year. And I remembered her, but I thought she won't remember me. So I didn't say anything. And she said, I remember you. And I went, how? And she said, because when I threw you out in Detroit a year ago, you were so polite. And that's how it began. And then when I got to Rotterdam to shoot the 3 songs for a German magazine, I had to phone up to get my pass, and it was her. and which I didn't expect either. And I said, I was promised more than 3 songs. She said, it's the first I've heard of it. She said, there are 75 photographers here tonight for those 3 songs. And I said, who's the official photographer? And she said, we don't have one. And I simply said, I'll do it. Wow. So she said, yeah. And she said, well, I couldn't ask you, but since you've asked me, I'll pass it on to the band, the world's biggest band. So I had gone from, virtually nothing to the biggest band in the world. She took me down, introduced me to them. I shot that show. Then they asked me to do another one, then another one. And then the time came and she came to me on the plane. And it was a giant private jet. It was an airliner that's got bedrooms and bathrooms and a lounge. And so Mick Jagger was in another part of the plane. And then she came to me and said, well, Mick says it's time to go. So this I was probably 2 weeks into the tour. And I said, why? She said, well, he'd like different viewpoints from different photographers, which I thought, quietly was a good idea, but I wasn't going to admit it. So I said, well, he hasn't looked at the pictures. And Keith Richards had actually looked at the photographs and was really interested, but Mick hadn't bothered. So I said, well, how can you get rid of me? He hasn't looked at the pictures yet. And she went back and she came back. He probably thought, God, that's cheeky. I might as well agree. So I said, can I stay until he does look at them? And she said, Mick says you can stay until Wembley, which was 4 weeks into the tour. It was exactly halfway through. Said you can stay till your home, your hometown. And then at Wembley Stadium, I walked into his dressing room and said, you'd said I could stay till you looked at the photographs. And he had that twinkle in his eye and he just said, oh, how remiss of me. Because I said, you haven't looked at them. So he said, how remiss of me. And I said, can I stay till you do? And he just winked and said, yes. So I stayed for another month.
Gosh,
so amazing. I know. So it was all of being a bit cheeky.
Yeah.
I think it was, and knowing what I wanted to do, which was tour the Rolling Stones, Queen and David Bowie, and I ended up touring with them all.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Great stuff. I mean, I can't imagine anything like that happening now. It seems like it was, what you were able to get in and do was of its time. I just think there's so many more people that you have to get through in order to get to the stars.
There was no access then. There was no internet to even find out where people were playing. There's no way to find out who the management was or to get hold of anyone because there was no internet. Travel was really, really expensive. So for me to get to Scandinavia to photograph Queen, for instance, a round trip 40 years ago was over £600.
Oh, goodness.
There was no EasyJet. There were no cheap airlines. They were all expensive. They all had monopolies on those routes. So it was very, very expensive. And then you had to buy all that film, which came to 40 years ago, if I went to photograph a punk concert, I would have to pay £150 in film before I could go. So it was very, very expensive and very difficult to get hold of people, which is why when you then did know someone, it made it a bit easier.
Yeah.
But
so if you don't mind me asking, aside from it being an amazing opportunity and you getting some great pictures, because it was costing so much to do all of this, how were you making money? At what point did that happen?
Well, I began really in punk, and with punk, everything changed, and it went from the big bands dominating everything, a little like the airlines, actually. It went from the big bands having their monopoly and preventing you getting anywhere, to punk, where access was really much more easy. So you could pay 75 pence at the time and get in to see a lot of the bands that the music papers then wanted to print. So actually, that's what did it, because I could never have accessed those big bands, but at all. They were utterly impossible. But punk, though, sort of democratized it all. So those photographs then appeared in the music papers with my name underneath. And I had a conversation with John Taylor from Duran Duran, who the first time I met him, again, I went to photograph Duran Duran when they were supporting Hazel O'Connor. And I went along to shoot for the same German magazine that I went to shoot the Stones with. And those German magazines would ask me to photograph things because they saw my pictures in the music papers and my name was underneath. So those things were little adverts for me, or for everyone, all the photographers. And what you would always do is take pictures in black and white for the music paper and then take colour, which you would sell to Japanese and German magazines, you see. So that's where a lot of the income came from. So it was, and also sometimes you get the record companies to contribute. et cetera, et cetera. So there were ways of trying to subsidize the trips. So that's really how it began. But I just thought recently, when you say how difficult it is, Coldplay obviously had this gigantic show, which I took my 19-year-old son to last year. And he said, I love Coldplay, but I don't like crowds. I said, well, try
listen to a CD then.
yeah. So I took him along and he saw Glastonbury and thought, oh my God, that's outrageous. And of course, everyone's wearing wristbands that light up.
Yeah.
So that came about in a similar way to me. So the guy had the idea, he had the concept, and he did what I did at one point. He paid for lunch at a charity event to have lunch with Chris Martin. Had lunch with Chris Martin and told him what he wanted to do and ended up doing it.
Oh, brilliant. I love that.
And that's where those millions of people wearing wristbands since then came from.
Oh,
so if you really want to do something, there are ways of doing it. He could never have got to Chris Martin probably, or the management, and he might well have been fobbed off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly as I would have been. So John Taylor then, when I met him that night, and they were still a support band, and the journalist said, this is Denis, and he said, Denis O'Regan. I went, yeah. How do you know that?
That's a good start.
Yeah. And he said, because I saw all your photographs in NME, the music paper. So I know your name really well. And then just about a year ago, he asked me about shooting those punk bands in the early days. And again, you asked about costs. I mean, I developed all those films and did all the prints at home in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. I couldn't afford to get them developed anywhere. So I would shoot the Ramones and then come home and take the films out of the canister and develop them and hang them up to dry. And because I had an office job, I would have to use a hairdryer to dry the negatives, then do the contact sheets, then do prints. And then at lunchtime the next day, I would take those prints. And this is how I told John. I said, I'd take those prints into NME. And John interrupted and just said 2 days later, then I would read that NME on the bus to school. So that's how it happened. You see, word got around. And a lot of that hasn't changed, really. It might be Instagram now, but it's still people find out who you are and maybe approach you. And you become well known, then you can approach people yourself.
Yeah.
So it can be really, really, really difficult. But there were just different difficulties. That's really what it was.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And difficult question, I guess, but when you're taking photographs of people, what are you looking for? What makes a good photograph of a person?
You mean off stage rather than live?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I suppose again, David Bowie is the person I toured with the most. So I toured with him for nearly 2 years. So it's quite a routine. It just sounds very first world again. But, it's obviously you're in the 5-star hotel, you get in the morning, there's a van or a bus or a car to take you to the plane, you drive straight to the tarmac and, to the plane and up the steps and off you go. But that happens nearly every day. And so it becomes very routine. But I would get up in the morning and David would arrive and I'd think, he looks good today or he looks a bit rough today. So that's how I would decide, because most of my photographs were taken at the hotel, backstage, etc., because they were the only places we ever went, apart from going out to dinner. And sometimes I'd go out to dinner and David would say, well, might as well bring your camera, which to me felt, well, I'm going to dinner, but I had to be prepared to work. And then if there was just something that caught my eye about him, and I would take that picture. So one I'm thinking of was a night off, in inverted commas, and David said, do you want to come out to dinner? It was in Japan, and we had a dinner. There were about 6 of us sitting on the floor, so very traditional. And, I took a few pictures of David, laughing and joking, and that was kind of it, nothing special. And then he stood up and put on his Trilby hat. And I don't know why, but I just started giggling. It just looked so funny. It looked a bit like a second-hand car salesman. And I could. So I said, I've got to take a picture now. I really want to take one. And it was a picture. And behind him, because we stood up, and behind him was the Japanese stuff on the wall. So, and that picture became really well known. And it was just a very spontaneous moment that I had never thought about taking that picture until he stood up and it tickled me. And then there'd be another day, maybe on the plane, and we're just sitting around, and he just looks really good that day. So then I start taking pictures of him on the plane, and then I get those pictures from a plane journey, or we went out on a picnic because he'd upset me, and he made up for it by inviting me and my girlfriend and a couple of other people out for a picnic in Australia. And he hired the car, he organised the picnic. And he drove. It was so sweet, and that became a special moment. And so it would just be when you're with someone and you're going to be there a long time. You don't really push to take too many pictures off stage. It's just if this looks good, that looks good. But I could say really that almost 100% of the photographs, he's either laughing or smoking or both. And because it's so relaxed, I have these photographs and I think, oh my God, I can't believe it. I didn't come in here to take pictures like his hotel room or at the gym that day. And it's only when I thought, in the gym, there was a huge window next to him and it had all the used cars outside in Houston. And I really had gone there to photograph David. I thought it looked really nice like that. But of course, behind him was my camera bag. My camera's laid out, So they're in the photographs. And it's in there more than once. A picture of David in his hotel room, and you can see all my stuff on his sofa because I just wandered in for a chat. And that's how informal and unstructured it all was, really. There were very few set-up pictures.
And like all of us, most of us, sometimes when we have our photo taken, whether it's planned or not, we might look at the photo and be self-critical of it and go, no, I've got double chin there. And someone will say, no, you look lovely. You're laughing. It's a great picture. I assume that must happen with the stars. You might think it's a great picture. Do you have to sort of get their approval? And they might say, oh, no, I don't like that. Please don't publish that.
It's weird because what you just said is the conversation I would have with David. Exactly that. So I would put all my slides into a carousel and project them. And I'd have a little slideshow in my room, just me and him. And he'd come down to my room and then we'd sit there. He'd be on one side of the projector and I'm on the other. And of course I had to choose photographs I thought would, interest him, intrigue him. So after the first few shows, there would be fewer live photographs and more offstage so that he wouldn't get bored and neither of us would get bored really. And we'd go through them. And obviously I'd chosen what I considered to be the best to show him. And it was often I'd show and he'd go, nah. I think, oh, here we go. So I go, well, what's wrong with it? And he said, he said, do you like it? And I go, well, yeah, I do. And he said, well, why? And I would tell him, he'd say, okay, then, if that's your reason, then that's fine with me. So they would often be, and with Duran Duran, unfortunately, then it's 5 people. See, with someone like David Bowie, it's easy, it's just 1. Oh my God, with 5, it's a nightmare. And then you might get 4 of them going, great, great, great. And from the back, you'd get 1, which was usually Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran, and go, get rid of it.
It's not a good one of me, yeah.
No. And the other ones, they'd all go, but we love it. And he goes, well, I don't, and that was that. But with David, I could have the little conversation and persuade him to like something if I had a good enough argument, which was exactly what you said, really. I like it. So that's how that worked, yeah. And then since then, there was stuff that he approved when I wasn't around, and I'd see the contact sheets, the printed images from the negatives. And I would see this pen just scrawling through certain pictures. So the Sharpie says a lot.
Yes. Oh, lovely. Well, if people want to get a copy of the book, it is a stunning book. It's called David Bowie, From the Man Who Photographed Him Most. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Denis O'Regan, who we've been chatting with today. Denis, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to chat with you.
Thank you too. Thank you very much. Bye.